end up having bigger implications, especially if you run into that Astos in the early game.
Absolutely.
I'd say the other big flag difference between this and the pod rounds, the pod rounds had vanilla tiles or trap tiles, which meant that really the best trap tiles you're looking for, you know exactly where they are and you know exactly how much XP they're going to give you. But now we have randomized trap tiles, so it's a more common flag set in FFR. So we'll be seeing how these players approach looking at tile grinds, especially with this black belt, and there we go.
Yeah. So both runners off to the races, and right away taking a quick look at the magic. So we have white locked heal 3, or sorry, red wizard learnable heal 3, but no real good offensive magic here, but we do have a nice spell in warp in order to get a little bit of additional mobility.
Yeah, I'm a little disappointed that we don't have any lamp pickups at the moment, because lamp is both white mage and red mage learnable, and we know how much we like lamp just as a just-in-case option, especially with that black belt. A little bit of sarcasm there, but with a chain +5 armor and a cap +5, armor is looking incredibly good right now.
Yeah, that is a ton of early game absorb for these red mages, and I wouldn't be surprised if both runners decided to move their red mages to the front right away, as they're going to be able to take advantage of that improved armor situation. While our runners kind of do their early game shopping, maybe we'll quickly take a look at this draft. So, of course, being in the bracket rounds, we are on drafted parties, which means both runners have to play the same party, and they're going to select it in kind of a snake order. So, BurtReynoldz, with the first pick, selected a white mage. SirLinkALot selected red mage black belt, and at that point there's not really a bad party comp that could end up, and then Burt finished off with a red mage, so pretty standard. There's a couple of weaknesses of the party that you were mentioning though before the broadcast, EVS.
Yeah, I mean, typically when you're looking at a black belt party, the biggest thing is having a little bit of AoE magic to just get through the early game, but the only late game spells that you really care about are life and fast. Life is going to make sure you can res any characters that die on the way to chaos, and fast is actually going to double your hit count. So, typically you'll have a black belt do about 8 to 10 hits once you enter Topher, and this ups that to about 16 to 20 hits. So more than doubling the amount of damage that you're going to do. So by taking no black mages, you're risking not having those fast casts in the later game.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, this all being said, these Temple of Fiends Revisited with the 100 to 200% scaling HP are definitely beatable without fast, but it will just make it a little bit more dangerous, as you're going to give them potentially more rounds to get spells off, more rounds to punch back.
Yeah, I mean, like a lot of people see, and we see Invis 2 in level 2 white magic, and it looks like Fire 3 is the big pickup. Which, if I'm running this, if I'm looking for a level 3 spell, Fire 3 is the one that I want, far above Ice 3 or Lit 3, especially for this early game.
Yeah, I mean, Lit 3 is also a really strong contender, depending on where you're going, but I agree. Fire 3, not the most powerful of AoE sweepers, however, a lot of things are weak to it, especially in the early game. There's kind of a common saying that everything in Marsh is weak to fire, so... not a bad pickup by any stretch. Little divergent paths here, though. SirLinkALot punched some imps, and then took level 2, and then went to Provoca to get some spells. Meanwhile, BurtReynoldz going straight into Garland. I believe the reason SirLinkALot did this, though, is because he was worried about shuffled Astos showing up as the King or Sarah, which I think is the correct play. Yeah,
and we didn't really have a lot of strong black magic at the very beginning, and so I think this play over to Provoca also allowed him to pick up that Fire 3, knowing that he can just wipe Garland whenever he gets there. And, typically, you mentioned Marsh Cave. We usually have, in the community, avoid Marsh at all costs. But with this particular flag set, having a loose canoe and an incentivized canal, there is a high probability that our runners are going to be pushed towards Marsh Cave. So having that safety of Fire 3, knowing that you can survive an early marsh, I think is definitely going to influence these runners, especially with the warp coming in at level 1.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know if it's like a high probability, but definitely higher than normal. Most of the time, they're going to be looking at Earth Cave before they look into Marsh. But if they don't find the canal in the early game, then Marsh is going to be the option that they need to go for. BurtReynoldz punching Garland down the slow and steady way, and this is just already kind of losing any time advantage he would have gone from not having to sail back and forth. Our encounter rates are relatively low, and the sea has a low encounter rate to begin with. So SirLinkALot may end up being able to kill Garland before Burt manages to punch him down 1 damage at a time.
Yeah, and we'll have to see how much of a difference this makes in the long run, because it looks like Burt's going to pick up, or SirLinkALot's going to pick up about 2 minutes in his decision to go to Provoca first, just by the nature of Burt having to get some early levels and spend a lot more time taking out this Garland. Burt's such a phenomenal player that I'm sure he can make up a lot of this time in the mid game, but we'll see how Link adjusts to all of the everything that this seed has to throw at us.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's by no means insurmountable, but this really shows that getting Fire 3 first just speeds everything up. Nothing much in those top left chests here,
Yeah.
and SirLinkALot about to fight Garland with basically having full, already cleared Provoca, so just kind of a straight time advantage.
Yeah, and we're going to see very quickly how much this Fire 3 is going to affect the long game, with 65 damage and already done 2 turns. And again, we have BurtReynoldz just and you called it. Look at that. The king was Astos all along.
So
and now
this is really bad for Burt, potentially. If he just decides to fight Astos right after Garland, he's going to most likely wipe, and all this time is going to just be straight lost, and that's going to set him back like 3-4 minutes.
Yeah. And SirLinkALot resetting out. I understand why he did that. He burned his last 2 Fire 3 spells, and now, he could have continued to hit Astos, but Astos threw out that first round heat. So Link is just saying, you know what, I'm going to get a level or 2 to make sure that I can get up my my cast count, and then we'll see what happens from there.
Oh no, Burt.
Oh,
Burt, no.
Oh, Burt. Oh, I love cameras. That look said it all.
Go somewhere else.
Yes, please, Burt. Go to Provoca.
Okay. So both of our runners having a little bit of time loss here. But, SirLinkALot having kind of a more obvious plan here. Gonna kill Garland. Gonna probably save, and then go kill Astos, or go kill the king who is Astos afterwards.
Yeah. I don't know if he picked up any houses on his travels. Actually, you know what? With 1 Fire 3 being used, he's going to talk to Sarah, then go save, and then take on the king.
Yeah,
that's
a really
good play. That's a really good play.
Yeah, and these are those small adjustments that Shuffled Astos makes you make, and this is honestly the worst case scenario. You just have to make sure you play around it properly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we did see that Sarah had the ruby. The king had the crown, so we do have a play for, we have the 3 Matoya chests, the 2 dwarf chests, and then we can do the northwest check. But again, that probability of having to dive March is just going up and up with every one of these encounters.
Yeah, absolutely. So Astos does have quite high MDef, which means Fire 3 is unlikely to roll high against him. However, enough of them will do the trick, and SirLinkALot, through kind of, this early game gauntlet, gets to sit on the throne for a second, which is quite unusual, and then going to go and probably head, as you said, to Elfland, potentially stopping in Dwarves or Matoya if he wants first to check those chests, and then head on over to turn that crown into the Kindly Old King, who is actually just the Kindly Old King.
Yeah, well, it looks like SirLinkALot is going to go up to Matoya first. BurtReynoldz taking on his pirates, which he will get his wonderful bounty of probably a little over 1,000 gold, if I remember correctly. And we'll see if this run up to Matoya actually gives anything to SirLinkALot.
Yeah, so with this party, we're not looking for too much. A ribbon, a defense sword, and of course the critical loose canoe is really what we're looking for. Early money or a caster item for the early game is all pretty worthwhile as well. So SirLinkALot's going to walk this one out. That mage staff is very valuable.
Oh yeah, and especially for a black belt grind, that mage staff opens up a lot of possibilities. You're looking for, the mage staff and the black shirt would probably be the 2 that I'm looking for the most. the Mage Staff because it casts fire and is very good against Vermidus's, and the Black Shirt because it casts Ice 2 and it's incredibly good against the Agamas. So depending on what grind tiles we have, I'd say that's a fantastic caster item for this round.
So SirLinkALot already opening up a little bit of an early lead here, but by no means insurmountable, as BurtReynoldz is just kind of going to be following in SirLinkALot's footsteps for the next minute or two. SirLinkALot, though, giving us our first look at level 3 magic, and we have, the big spell itself. We have level 3 Nuke, which is definitely something that both runners are going to be happy to see.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a little bit expensive, but considering the fact that we just got like 1,600 gold from Vicky, and we got a good amount of gold from Natoya, both runners are going to buy it for both of their red mages, and we'll see what level 4 has to offer us.
So critically right now, so still no life spells, so that's making it increasingly unlikely that the red mages are going to be able to learn some life, but we also have Temper available here, which is not 100% necessary with the black belt, but is a nice to have, and having it at level 4 means we will have a number of casts available.
Yeah, and the other thing is we haven't seen fast. You know, you're really only looking for the first 4 levels of black magic, especially with those red mages, because they can learn any black magic in the first 4 spell levels, but once you start getting into level 5 and up, then you have to start worrying about permissions. So it looks like SirLinkALot going to pick up that nuke, but also going back for Brack, which is a great strategy for, Kraken and Tia as he goes forward, and he's going to make his way up to Northwest Castle to do that crown check.
Yeah, so the items that he's looking for here in Northwest Castle are the canal, or the key, or another fetch quest. Those are kind of the items that are going to be of importance. Interestingly, if this is the floater, that is a very high chance of the canoe being in Marsh.
Ooh, a flugel!
So of course the flugel is multi-instrumentalist Sarah, which is a fun flag. So that is the loot, which is one of the 2 required items for us to be able to beat the Temple of Fiends Revisited. Of course, a number of other items are actually required. The rod, the oxtail, the chime, and the cube, just so we can defeat the 4 fiends to break the black orb and travel 2,000 years into the past. But not counting that, we just need the key and the loot. So with those chests, what were you saying, DVS, about a marsh dive?
Yeah, looks like we have a required marsh. Only a couple hundred up in Dwarf Cave. And with his flugel in hand, it looks like SirLinkALot is going to go down to marsh. And if I'm SirLinkALot, with where I am right now, I am 100% confident in this marsh dive. Now, Granted, we did have Danny roll the seed, so nothing's for certain. But with having a Mage Staff, which casts Fire 2, with having Fire 3 and 2 red mages, he's got enough offense to survive.
Yeah, I won't go so far as to say this is a slam dunk, but I think one thing this is definitely doable. It might take another try, because any spell could wipe this party. They're too low level, they have no HP. But they have the tools required that with enough, patience, trial, and effort, they can get through this. I don't think they're lacking any critical tools.
Yeah, and I didn't see if SirLinkALot picked up a house, but if he did pick up a house, you'll see him check these last 2 chests, warp twice, plant the house, and then go directly down to Marsh Bottom. And it looks like Bert's starting to catch up. He's finished his Garland fight. He's coming down to Dwarf to check out what's there, and we'll probably see him head down to Marsh in the near future.
Yeah, so SirLinkALot deciding that the EXP and couple thousand gold he got up there not worth it even to spend the house or anything like that, so he's just resetting out, which also makes a lot of sense. Generally speaking, the reasons that you warp out of the top are if you get a bunch of EXP or you get a important item that you want to keep, like maybe like a Bane sword. Of course, a ribbon or a defense sword is an automatic, I want to keep this type of thing. But SirLinkALot going to be heading down to the bottom, and we will be seeing what he runs into shortly.
Yeah, and I do want to make a mention of something that happened a little bit earlier. This just goes back to the flag set. In typical Final Fantasy, so you buy your NES, play Final Fantasy. Again, you'll notice a lot of differences, but one of the big ones is there is a path to walk from Canaria directly to Dwarf Cave called Open Progression, which is kind of one of the Oh, and there's the canoe. First check down in Marsh, and it looks like SirLinkALot's going to do a couple more chest checks, but now that he has the canoe in hand, he's probably going to go directly to Crescent Lake.
Yeah, so I think maybe a Ruby turn in first, but yes, I agree with that.
yeah.
And yeah, a couple of the differences, as you said, is that we have open progression, which lets you walk there, and then we also have extended open progression, which is what Burt was just using, which I'm sure is what you're going to comment on, which opens up that river system without the canoe. This tile is awful.
Yes,
SirLinkALot's going to regret the fact that he wanted to check what this was. It was definitely a very reasonable play, as with this black belt, you definitely want to find a grind tile. It's just this is not the grind tile you are looking for.
Yeah. Try. I ran out of the thing I was going to try to say.
Okay, Lobster's not being the worst there. Got a couple levels there, and he is going to be warping out of here
with his flash bolt.
Yeah, but warp so nice to make that marsh dive just so much safer to get out of. The number of times I have died just steps from the exit are innumerous. So
I remember what I was going to say. We still don't have a canal.
Yes.
We still don't have a canal. So we can't do the Ruby turn-in until we find that canal.
Right, so yes, Crescent Lake is on the yes, you're entirely right. So Crescent Lake is on the board. Now, if it's not in Crescent Lake, what are our options?
Yeah, so if this was me, I would probably save at the junction, the river system, where you could go up to Volcano and Ice or go right to Crescent Lake. And so those are our 3 incentive locations that are an option. Crescent Lake is a town. You've got some potential extra armor. There's some great enemy packs to get some quick gold and some quick experience. You could go up to Volcano, which has the Volcano Armory, which has a lot of chest checks. It also has about 4 or 5 different trap tiles to check. Mm-hmm. And then you have Ice Cave, which has, I want to say, about 5 or 6 trap tiles, as well as a lot of chests as well.
Yeah, it has 5, so yeah.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I don't think that this is a clear answer of you should do this one, then this one, then this one. So we'll see if there's a little bit of route divergence when we get to this river system.
Yeah, I would argue the default play here is going to be Crescent Lake, and then a little bit up in the air. I think with Warp, I'm leaning slightly towards Ice Cave over Volcano. But I think there's arguments to be made for both. SirLinkALot going to be showing us what his plans are, but I can't see skipping Crescent Lake, because Crescent Lake actually has a second opportunity as well, which is the shop item being there.
True, very true. And we haven't seen the shop item yet. Since we found the Flugel, we don't have to worry about having, the loot or whatever instrument we have being in a shop, which is a $65,000 item. It's just one of those things that in the game's code with this current release, the loot always ends up being $65K and the crown always ends up being $155. That's going to be changing in our next update, but you could have the chime, you could have the Oxio, you could have any number of things in the shop. And it looks like we only have healed and tents.
Yeah, or we have healed pots and tents. Gold +1, that's not bad endgame armor. But obviously it's not
at 7,000 though.
Yeah.
7,000.
Also critically, we have a few important spells here at level 6. So at level 6, we had Life 2 and Slot 2, which is going to be Red Wizard learnable. And then we had Fast, which is Black Mage only.
Ooh, and a white shirt -4 from the Circle of Sages, which, the white shirt is you always are happy to find a white shirt. What it does is it casts Invis 2. If you haven't played Final Fantasy before, which I played it for the first time probably about a year ago, I had no idea what it meant by cast items. So what happens is, if you go to item, it is going to show you your weapons and armors, which is a little weird. But if you have something like a mage staff or a white shirt, the defense sword, what it's going to do is it's going to give you an infinite number of whatever spell is linked to it. So the benefit of the mage staff is not just that it casts Fire 2, it's that it casts an infinite amount of Fire 2. And the thing of the white shirt, it's not just one cast of Invis 2, it's an infinite number of casts, which is why our runners are so eager to find those particular items.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, the white shirt, as you mentioned, is a pretty good equipment as well, in general, just for its absorb as well as its resistances. But unfortunately, -4, not quite so good. So that gold bracelet is going to be a better option for our white wizard if we get there. Promotion's becoming interesting. The life being promotion locked makes it quite tempting to promote, but there's not a lot of reason, and it can just end up being a time save or a time waster. So we'll have to see. It also really depends on the tail and floater locations. We should quickly touch on the reason why promotion is not just quite so instant. One is it takes a long time to walk all the ways down to Bahamut. With Warp, it's a little bit faster, but not guaranteed. The other reason is that the Black Belt gains less MDef once it's promoted than when it is just a Black Belt. So once it becomes a Master, which is the promoted class, it only gains, I believe, 1 or 2 MDef per level, which is much worse than Black Belt. Yeah. So you want to delay promoting as long as you can for a Black Belt, which is an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have been kind of bouncing around this, but we did talk about the white shirt being -4 and how much that affects its usability. And that is something that our devs have created called Blurst Armor and Weapons. Blurst meaning blessed or cursed. And so for all of our armors, if you have, plus or minus whatever, it is going to increase the absorb for anything but armor by that number. If it's a body armor, it's going to change the absorb by 2. So that white shirt is actually going to be, I think it was -4, 8 less absorb than the vanilla white shirt. It's also going to reduce the weight penalty by 1 per bonus, or 2 for body armor. And so it's going to be a substantial negative on what the vanilla was. For weapons, what we have is for every point in Blessed or Cursed, you're going to affect your damage by 2, your hit percent by 3, and your crit by a number of 3, but it's about 1.5% per bonus. So when you look at those numbers, they're going to affect all of those different things, and Jat and I will be talking about those as we go through the run.
Yeah. Now with black belts, weapon blursing is not as important as it would be with like a fighter or a thief, as that black belt's not going to be equipping much. But a red mage with a Masa +6 can do a lot of work, and it should not be understated, the importance of that.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And again, like with these black belt strats, there's a lot of discussion in the community about black belts and their efficacy and how much we should use them. Granted, they will punch for about 2,000 to 3,000 damage against some of our final bosses, but at the same time, it takes a lot of time to get them to that point, and you also have to figure out what you're going to do with the rest of your party. So we're going to have to see how Burt and SirLinkALot both decide to approach their grinds and how they're going to route the seed to make best use of both their black belt and the rest of their party.
So speaking of potential black belt grinds, we did just find a Mudgall tile. It's not amazing. They have somewhere around over 250 HP, but less than 400. Never mind. We won't even speak about those galls anymore, because we just found a very, very good grind tile here in the Sandwich Station, or the Sandworms. They are well known for a few things, but 1, they're worth a boatload of EXP, and 2, they tend not to be especially dangerous. Now, we haven't confirmed that quite yet, because we haven't been able to see, multiple turns of them, if they have skills, spells, death touch, anything like that. But this is a pretty good default grind. One problem with it, though. It's in Ice Cave, which is not the place you generally want to be grinding with a solo black belt. Right.
And part of that is because of the walk out, because it takes a while to get to that grind tile, but you can usually have your full party for that. When you're looking for a good black belt grind, you're looking to find a tile that you can have just your black belt and have everybody else unconscious. So in finding that tile in that location, you can grind up your black belt, but if you have something with stone touch or stun touch or any number of other horrible, awful things in Ice Cave, then you might end up getting wiped on the way out, which could cost you, and this is no exaggeration, 10 to 15 minutes, depending on your grind length.
It can cost you the race, absolutely.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
So, BurtReynoldz in Crescent Lake. Meanwhile, SirLinkALot has cleared out Ice Cave, so it's about 1 mini dungeon apart. Yeah, SirLinkALot was going towards Crescent Lake, which surprised me a little bit. I think Volcano is the only play there is to make at this point. You could go save and get some some spell charges if you wanted, but SirLinkALot is going to be diving straight into Volcano. Now, something that's interesting and I'm curious to see if BurtReynoldz makes a different decision by choosing not to grind on that Sandwich Station right away. SirLinkALot will have more difficulty killing carry at the bottom of this dungeon. Versus if Burt decides to grind, he could single dip Volcano as opposed to double dip it. So, just something to keep in mind here. Ooh.
Okay. This is your end game tile. Like, at the moment, this is my end game tile. There's two reasons for that. Number one, it is fighters, which are usually there's only 1 or 2 fighters that actually show up. Number two, they have a ton of experience. And the reason this makes it better than the sandwich station, other than the fact you get more experience, is the fact that it's a very quick walk to this tile and out from this tile. So it's not unreasonable to think that you could walk to the tile and out of Volcano without getting a single encounter.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful tile. That's an absolutely beautiful tile.
Yeah, I think sandwiches might be preferred by some runners if there wasn't a location difference.
Right.
If they were both in the volcano. But because of the location, I think the fighters are definitely something they're going to be looking at very seriously. Not so much this imp tile. This is kind of garbage.
Right.
It's stingrays.
Yeah. So I did want to kind of, because we're in speed gaming and we're both of our runners are kind of just doing a walk and a grind at the moment. I want to talk a little bit about what makes the Final Fantasy randomizer a bit more unique compared to some of our other randomizers. And so for me personally, and Jat, you can feel free to chime in on this too. I think about other randomizers in a lot of a focus on routing and execution, but Final Fantasy randomizer is different because there are hundreds of decisions that you have to make in a very, very small amount of time. Even in terms of, our runners choosing, do I run? Do I use an item? Do I use magic? Do I attack? Who do I equip? Where do I move? Mm-hmm. There's hundreds of decisions that can be made. And I'm not to say that other randomizers aren't as cool as Final Fantasy randomizers, but I think that's part of what drew me to this randomizer in the first place.
Yeah, I think the difference is that there's a lot more knowledge and decision making is more important in this. It's not that there's more necessarily or better. It's just it's more important than just raw execution as opposed to some other ones. And compared to something like A Link to the Past randomizer, which when you're in rooms with a sword, you basically are going to route through them the exact same way every single time if you're optimal. And then you just need to learn with if I have the hammer versus if I have the boots here, there's slight variations. But once you have it with each of those variations, you absolutely know how you're going to deal with it. Here, because the enemies are constantly changing, because your spell selections, what levels, your party level, your gear, all that changes. It subtly tweaks a lot of these very micro decisions, and those micro decisions really add up at a macro scale. Right. So yeah, I agree, and I think that's an interesting part about why we enjoy this game. Now, I play other randomizers as well, and I enjoy them as well. I was just finishing up with an Aria of Sorrow randomizer, actually, which I believe the finals is either tonight or tomorrow, depending on what time you're watching this at. But that's a very different game and a very different experience. So, going back into decision making, it looks like SirLinkALot has decided that, he agrees with you, DVS. This fighter tile is very nice. One nuke takes it down a lot of the time, which is really, really encouraging. And he is going to take a full party grind for at least a number of levels. This is not actively him trying to Dan off or let his characters become unconscious on purpose, because he hasn't unequipped his armor, which means he actually wants his characters to survive, and that makes a lot of sense. I think what he's going to be doing here is he's going to be bringing his whole party up maybe until 2018, somewhere around there, and then he's going to be going out, housing up, and then starting to let some of his characters die off, so that way he can get a solo grind going.
Right. Yeah, I think if I was him, I'd probably be taking this to the low 20s, partially because you have that, your red mage or your primary casters, and they get spell slots slightly slower than the black mage and the white mage. And since you have nuke at such a low level, you want to get that to max casts, which is 9, as quickly as possible. So I totally understand this grind.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be getting his max nuke cast, but another consideration is also life 2 being at level 6 and us not seeing any other life charges, and having a number of charges of that on the white mage is going to be quite important. So there's that initial warp out, going back in and going to be making, I assume this is going to be some more grinding. Yeah,
It's interesting too because, and we'll see how Burt takes his grind because, one of the things about choosing a grind is that the tile matters, your party comp matters, and your number of key items matter. So, when we're talking about like loot, cube, crown, all of that, every time one of our runners picks up one of those items, it increases the amount of experience they gain by 5%. And so by SirLinkALot doing this grind right now, he only has a 20% or so, 30% experience buff. But if he waited till later, he could get upwards of a 50% experience buff. And so as good as this grind is at the moment, he's not going to want to take this too far because it's just going to take longer than it would if he waited an extra 10 minutes to go pick up other incentive items.
Yeah, I mean, this seed is especially fetch quest light, to be honest. Like, having the limited number of key items lit up that we have right now is like quite unusual, actually. Usually you have at least, the herb or some other turn-ins done. We've also already had a dud, which is quite unusual. So yeah, the number of things are making this grind a little bit slower, but at the same time, there's no way you want to double dip carry here. So I think you want to get at least high enough level that you can kill carry reliably. So I think the whole party grind is definitely happening right now. The question is whether or not he decides to go down to a solo black belt right now, or if he decides to go, maybe get his floater, wander around a little bit more, do a few more key item turn-ins like that ruby, which is going to be 2 key items. And then come back and do the solo black belt grind. Because in the volcano, it's pretty fast to set up, to be honest.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And we know, at the moment, we know that whatever the incentive item is in the volcano, it has to be either the floater or the canal. It's one of the two. And,
I think it has to be the canal, because I think the logic in the game require something that leads to the canal. Because the logic in the game is that the canal cannot be outside the inner sea, even if you get the floater early.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah,
we learn something every day.
So, we could have a trolley fetch quest all over the inner sea coming, but I believe that this has to lead to the canal at some point.
Yeah, and then it's a matter of, again, we might see another route. We might see another route divergence, but I would assume that if they do get the canal, they're going to head directly over to Melmond and then do the ruby check to Sarda. And then whether or not they decide to go directly into the Earth Cave to take out Lich is really going to depend on whatever it is that they find in Sarda and the ruby check.
I think if you get the rod, you do Earth. If you do not get the rod, you do Ordeals. I think that's basically the entirety of the decision here. We don't have Northern Docks on, which means that the floater is either going to be in one of 4 locations. That's either going to be Titan's Trove, behind the Titan, who we've moved forward so that the ruby blocks access to those 4 chests. It's going to be at Sarda. It's going to be the Vampire chest, which is where you get the vanilla ruby. Or it's going to be in the Castle of Ordeals, which in this case we can go to, regardless of whether or not we've had the crown or not, but in this case, of course, we do have the crown. So that's kind of the decision space that's waiting for these runners. And SirLinkALot is making the dive, has decided to stop his grind. This is going to be nuke and fade, killing carry, and I don't think that's going to be too much of an issue with carry maxing out at 1200 HP, and he has like 12 nukes or something like that.
Right. Yeah, I feel like if I was doing this run, I would, even if I didn't get the rod, there'd be a high probability of me doing Earth first, simply because I have Warp at level 1.
Yeah, that's always a good point.
And yes, I could be double diving, but at the same time, if I take all of the time to go down to Ordeals and check Ordeals and get the bottle, then I will be wasting far more time, seeing, shipping, navigating my way back to Earth Cave than just diving Earth in the first place.
Yeah, see, and this is why this game's interesting. Once again, this is just like another one of the decisions about what we're prioritizing. Like, I hate double dipping Earth. You hate, and you would prefer not to spend so much time double dipping, like the sailing back and forth. And those are both equally valid. I think it just depends on what your playstyle preference is. So SirLinkALot picking up the canal in Volcano. I get to be proven right so far, anyways. which is always good because commentators are wrong an awful lot, and we appreciate if chat corrects us at any given point. And SirLinkALot going to go take out Carry. This is going to be Nuke and Fade. One thing I did want to note is that those fighters were not as ideal as I thought they were, as they had actually quite high evade, and that high evasion led to some issues for the black belt to punch them. Once the black belt hits 21 or maybe even 32, definitely it's not going to be an issue. There's just going to be enough punches and enough crits, but a little bit of an issue for like that early grinding. But meanwhile, look at this, BurtReynoldz, only a few levels behind SirLinkALot, and already kind of caught up just because he's opened a lot less boxes. He was a lot less thorough in his checking of the volcano, and that's really allowed him to catch up some time.
Yeah, I mean, let's just think back to, he sat on that Garland fight for a long time while SirLinkALot was really just progressing. And now Burt's at the place where he is almost at the exact same spot as SirLinkALot. So he's picked up probably about 5 minutes just in the efficiency of his routing and his choice of box checks through this intercity.
I think box checks is the big, and like box checks and tile checks is the big one here. And it's just so happened that Burt decided not to open up boxes, and unfortunately for SirLinkALot, he hasn't found anything in the boxes that he's opened. There's been no tangible benefit to that box opening in terms of safety or speed, and that's the problem when you're opening boxes where there's like a 1 in 150 chance or 1 in 100 chance of getting an item that you actually care about.
Right.
Maybe not quite that low, but 1 in 40 even.
Oh yeah, and if I'm Burt, I think the community as a whole respects both of these runners immensely. In that fight with Garland, he took a risk, and to then have the Garland fight to Astos, I'm feeling very, very behind. And so definitely. I'm not going to do any of those safety checks that I normally would. And, we'll see, again, like so far it hasn't paid off for SirLinkALot. We'll see if that changes a little bit later into the run. And it looks like Burt's going back to do... Is he going back to do a grind, or did he pass it out?
I think this is... okay, so he is going to go open a couple boxes. And then we'll have to see if he decides to go do that grind. Like... Burt, as my co-op partner, he was one of the people who told me more than anything else that the key item experience is not that important. Like, don't think about it too much. Like, obviously, it should be something that's considered, but don't be like, oh, I need all my items before I do my grind. However, early levels have been very important. At the same time, this is very low key item experience compared to a lot of seeds. So that should be considered a little differently here. SirLinkALot out with the canal. Burt going back into the volcano quickly. Looks like he is going to take a little bit more of a grind at least. We're going to see if this is going to be his solo grind or if this is just going to be I want 3 more levels so that my black belt's at least 21 and I can solo grind later and my mages are, got lots of charges of everything they need, including at least critically a couple charges of life.
It's interesting to note. I saw SirLinkALot going back to Crescent Lake, and it wasn't my top choice of going back to. But now seeing him buy all of those gold ones and trying to figure out in really focusing on that defense, I really like the play. And just to give you guys a little bit of a background, you noticed him checking the status page, especially for that black belt. So in the vanilla game, the black belt is supposed to gain absorb, 1 for every level. But in the NES version, there were all the glitches and stuff that our amazing developers have happened to fix. And so currently the black belt gets 1 absorb for every level. So SirLinkALot was checking, hey, do I give this gold +1 to my black belt, or do I keep it so that the level is used for absorb? And I think it was clear that the gold +1 was the better option, but I would not be surprised if you see him unequip that gold +1 in a couple levels.
Yeah, and you're 100% right about the black belt, but I think what the one he was actually comparing was the chain +5 versus the gold +1, which is quite close. Black belt's much easier to know the absorb on because you just know what your absorb is in. Gold bracelet, silver bracelet, chain armor. I know, gold bracelet, silver bracelet. I know SirLinkALot has them all memorized in terms of their absorb. So yeah, but yeah, status screen checking definitely a good handy tool.
Yeah, that's
Our tracker tonight, who I want to shout out, Shadow Flames, always doing a fantastic job behind the scenes. Really valued member of our commentary community here, pointing out the gold +1 is 26 absorb and chain +5 is 25. So, very, very, very close.
Wow. Well, and then, so I'm not sure what the evade, how much the evade is affected, because with +5, you're going to get substantially more evade percentage than with the gold +1. I just don't know what the vanilla evade levels are. And that's, like, to me personally, I don't have all of these numbers memorized. And you can tell when you have a runner that knows these particular numbers because they're able to make these kind of decisions much faster than someone like me who legitimately has to check the status screen if I'm going to make this choice.
Yeah, so, yeah, 100%. And I mean, glowing that just saves you a bunch of time. Something to point out, though, is that lock 2, and we have not, I'm going to check our tracker notes again, but I don't think we've seen another lock. Lock 2, which is really the only lock spell that we're going to be able to get for these red mages, is in the warp slot, which is the only slot here that's going to be red wizard only. So quite unfortunate here. Yeah. Oh, sorry, there's 2 slots. That the Ice 3 is also red wizard only, but I know the warp slot is always a pain because black mages can't even learn it unpromoted, but red mages also cannot. So slightly unfortunate here for our runners that's going to push even more in the direction of promotion, as that's both lock 2 and life promotion locked.
Well, and we did see in the white magic that we had exit, ruse, and there was something else that was there. So those are going to be some good pickups for that white mage. I don't know the level 5 red wizard permissions, but that level 5 white, it had 3 very strong options.
Yeah, so actually, to be honest, this is probably the best place for Fade to land for that red mage, based off what we've seen. Obviously, lower levels are better as we're going to have more casts of it. So, definitely something to keep in mind here. And I believe that Fade was red wizard learnable as well, so even more reason to promote. So I'm going to be very curious, but at this point I think I'd be leaning towards promotion if at all possible. Like, if it requires Ordeals dive alongside other things, then maybe the tail's not going to be worth it. But if it's, in Sky, I think taking the 45 seconds just to go talk to Bahamut and then buy these spells will almost certainly be worth it.
Yeah, I wouldn't go out of my way to find the tail, but if I happen to find the tail in my general checks, it would definitely be on my mind as something to check. I think that, again, it would kind of depend as well. If I feel like I'm behind, then there's a good chance that I would take the dive to Topher without getting those spells. But if I feel like I had the room to use up the couple seconds to get that little extra security, I probably would.
And if you're dealing with a little bit of a stream hiccup here, we apologize. Hopefully we will get this resolved shortly. But in the meantime, we are listening to some sick Final Fantasy tunes, and we'll have to check in with what's going on with her runner shortly. What I'm assuming is happening right now is BurtReynoldz is continuing to do his grind for a little bit longer, though we'll have to see if he decides to just do a whole party grind or go down to a solo. Meanwhile, SirLinkALot is almost certainly turning into Ruby right now. So we will see shortly, and our poor tracker will have to catch up to see what SirLinkALot found there. If we tune back in and it is the floater, well, we'll know that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and just to kind of talk about, I hear floater sounds. So
I also hear floater sounds.
Sorry, airship sound. Sorry, I would be talking airship sound. So it sounds like SirLinkALot did find the floater, and he's getting a couple key items apparently. But we'll get a little bit of a better look once the streams start to catch up. But yeah, like in terms of Final Fantasy, just in general, we're seeing a pretty straightforward flag set. If you want to join our community, if you look at this and you say, hey, look, this game looks awesome, which it is, then head out to FinalFantasyRandomizer.com and just start running a couple seeds. We have, we can change pretty much every aspect of this game, and our developers are coming out with new amazing flags for us to use on a regular basis. And yeah, join the Discord, join Final Fantasy, and we'd love to see you out there.
Yeah, there's no better time than right now, as we are just about to get started on our new player program, which starts next Sunday. So you're going to have lots of opportunities to learn with other people who are just getting started, a couple more intermediate players, and learning from the best of the best as pretty much everyone in the community pitches in to help out. So would highly recommend, but hopefully we'll be getting back to the action shortly here. So we can see what's going on. But as DVS has sleuthed out, it does sound like Airship is incoming when this stream comes back.
Yeah, and to just double up on what Jack said about our community and how this is such a great time to join the community. Our Duckling program is what we refer to as our new player program, which, you know, I've dipped my toe in a number of different randomizers recently, and this is a program that is specifically designed for people to get into the game, to learn about the game, and to literally learn from some of the greatest players in the game. And it looks like we are starting to get our stream back. It looks like SirLinkALot is in Ice Cave and is going to be heading towards those sandwiches. And Burt is doing his solo grind with his black belt.
So this is very interesting. You know, coming back to this is actually kind of fascinating as we can kind of see exactly what's happened. So BurtReynoldz struggling against these fighters. As you remember when I mentioned that the high evasion on them is going to be a bit of a problem? Well, even this, you know, almost 30 black belt is taking a bunch of punches to take out these fighters, and they are low HP just because they're high evasion. Meanwhile, SirLinkALot has decided that the sandworms are going to be the future and is going to be starting his grind shortly. So BurtReynoldz not that far behind because remember, he has his canal. All he has to do is this ruby turn is whatever key item locations that SirLinkALot did, and then Burt is just going to be in the air and in a very similar situation with his grind already done. Meanwhile, SirLinkALot is going to start his grind now. A couple more key locations in hand and a different grind tile. And in these black belt flag sets, this grind tile selection tends to be one of the most important decisions you make. And something that's really been a story of this tournament so far has been the wipes from the grind tiles. So, you know, keep your eyes peeled. Grinding is not the most interesting thing to watch, but the decision making around it is essential.
And I do like this interesting play by SirLinkALot. You saw him working through, you know, the grind tile with the sandwiches for a little bit. And now he's checking the 3 other grind tiles that are on. Oh, he only checked the 1. But checking another grind tile just to say, hey, look, I want to make sure that there's not an even better tile just 10 steps away. Yeah. And I wouldn't be surprised to see him in the near future just start walking on that back and forth.
Yeah.
And
so
do you want to explain how that particular mechanic works?
Yeah, so every step that you take on lava, or in this case ice tiles, are going to lose all of your character's 1 HP. And when you're facing something like these sandworms, which don't seem to do very much damage, you actually need a way to get your characters dead quickly. And sometimes just walking across that is faster than waiting for a bunch of turns for the sandworm to punch your characters down. The risk of that is that you may get an off-step encounter that can be catastrophic, so you need to be kind of careful. But I think it's a very reasonable play.
So it looks like SirLinkALot is going to try to rely on the sandworms taking out his light warriors just naturally. They're doing about 70-some damage, and that's why you saw him take all of the armor off of his characters to try to make them go down faster. We'll end up seeing if this is faster than, you know, just walking on ice for a while. But yeah, you're going to look for him hoping and praying that all of his other party members, except for that black belt, end up going down very quickly.
And it's happening. I think that with the sandworms doing 70 damage or so, this will be faster than walking on the tiles. The one issue with this is that there's a small risk of, like, if you take too long, things like that. But I think this is generally okay. I like walking on the tiles if I have, like, a Cure 4 available, because then you can just cure up your black belt quickly. But when it involves burning heal pots, this is usually a little bit faster anyways.
Yeah. And there it is. Look at that.
So BurtReynoldz is down to, you know, has been punching pretty well here, and now that his black belt has passed that 32 threshold, these fighters aren't doing, you know, are going down usually in 1 turn. And I do think that this is definitely a 42 black belt seed as opposed to a 32 one. 42, of course, being a critical breakpoint because it's when the black belt gets 2 additional hits. And without access to fast here, as well as, you know, no ribbon so far, potentially no defense sword, I think you're going to want that additional firepower as well as that additional magic resistance.
Yeah. Well, and we do see that it looks like BurtReynoldz is getting slightly more experience, probably about 1,000 more experience per enemy than SirLinkALot is. And even with having less key items. So we talked about a little bit earlier that key items all give you a 5% experience buff. but that doesn't necessarily mean you should abandon your grind in order to get all of your key items, as Burt is clearly demonstrating with this very quick fighter grind.
Yeah. I will say though that, you know, SirLinkALot's grind is also relatively quick, and Burt's been here for a while because there's a number of factors that play into grind efficiency. One of them is just how long each fight takes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Grind efficiency is essentially fight time plus heal pot time plus multiplied by experience per fight.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so you have to keep all of those variables into account, and the fact that these sandworms go down in one punch every single time, since this black belt has essentially, okay, maybe not one punch every single time, but usually 1 or 2 punches every single time since this black belt has been level 24, has sped up SirLinkALot's grind quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we do see, well, the other thing that you have to factor in is runaway percentage. Now, you'll notice that SirLinkALot has kept his black belt in slot 4, and the reason for that is if he had put his black belt up at slot 1, at its current level, those sandworms are going to start running away. And so he'd start losing encounters simply because the enemy runs away. But the way he has his party set up right now, those sandworms are actually looking at that downed white mage and checking that white mage's levels to determine whether or not they run away. And he's using that to make sure that he can keep and continue to grind these sandworms for as long as possible.
Yeah, so another thing I would like to point out if you're, you know, a new player considering running this is to make sure that you always have 99 heal pots before you go anywhere that has like potential grind tiles, if you at all can afford it, because it really makes a big difference in these solo black belt grinds. You need a big stack of heal pots in order for them to be good. Yeah,
I think was it our fall league finals that heal pots ended up being a major factor in our runs as to how efficiently we were taking it down. Which, by the way, if you love Final Fantasy Randomizer and you want to see some crazy chaos with some amazing flags, on Sunday, which is tomorrow at noon, I believe we're having our 3rd and 4th place match for our fall league. So please feel free to, I don't know exactly where that's going to be shown, but it's going to be an amazing time tomorrow.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that's going to be 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so it should be, you know, not too long actually after this potentially gets broadcast. So BurtReynoldz, we're about to see kind of what the actual difference between our two runners are, as BurtReynoldz has kind of done his grind, SirLinkALot is in the middle of his, and then Burt is going to be going and turning in a number of his key items and then moving on. With all that cash, deciding that he can buy an infinite supply of houses. And going to be, continuing on here with his whole party up. I believe that black belt's either 40. I didn't think I saw 42, but I might be wrong. But it's going to be 42 by the time he gets into the Temple of Fiends Revisited.
Yeah, absolutely. Our tracker's saying that he's at level 40.
Yeah,
so
okay.
I can see him. It looks like he's going to turn in and then probably head right onto his ship. I didn't see from his tracker. Oh no, he left his ship way up here at the northern dock. Okay. Yeah. So Burt's gonna go over. He's gonna do his Titans check. He's gonna do his Sarda check. He'll be in the air, and if at that point him and SirLinkALot are gonna be equal again. There's not gonna be really any advantage between our two runners.
So a very close race. I would say that there's not a major grind advantage on either side. I think both of their grinds were reasonably efficient and about the same efficiency, assuming SirLinkALot survives here, which, I mean, it had to be pretty bad things, but SirLinkALot, I think healing pots now is probably a good idea. Yeah, there we go.
Crossing our fingers that he has him there. Ooh, and Pro Rings +5 in Malmund. I don't think we got to saw SirLinkALot buy those, but based on his inventory earlier, I think we saw him doing some changes there. So we got a good grind going on SirLinkALot's side. BurtReynoldz is very settled into where his levels are at. He's going to buy his spells. I don't anticipate him checking too many more spell shops, and I could see him really just looking for go mode as soon as humanly possible.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have to see here. I think the big questions right now are just, when do people promote? And okay, let's turn our attention quickly over to BurtReynoldz' side of the screen here, as he is about to be giving us our actual first look at this Titans Trove, which we do know that SirLinkALot did, almost 10-15 minutes ago at this point. But we will get to see what the items are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you'll notice that he didn't actually go down and check those chests at Titans, and we'll probably see it on his way back. But this is very, it's step efficiency. So when you see our runners walking around the overworld, if you're familiar with any sort of Final Fantasy or a typical RPG where you walk around an overworld, you're going to see the runners trying to make very, very specific decisions in terms of where their characters make steps. And for this particular instance, you're going to see him focus on this left side simply because it's fewer steps to go to reset out of this cave and walk down than to check these checks and walk back up. So you're going to expect to see him pick up his floater, go to his spell list, warp out, save again, and then walk to the other, not save again, and now walk to the other side of the cavern just to save about 5 or 6 steps. Probably more like 5 to 10 steps.
Yeah, it's very minor, but these optimizations this is more where that like Link to the Past style, like memorization of your step routing comes into play, where you just want to do the same thing every single time given certain requirements, because it's always going to be more efficient. So once you learn that once, you just keep those efficiencies forever, and it just becomes instinct rather than something you have to actively think about.
Mm-hmm.
SirLinkALot is level 41, so this should be his last Sandworm fight, or maybe 1 or 2 more, and he will be going. This is slightly safer, especially because he has to walk out of here, but it will just give, once again, Burt a small little edge in terms of Burt didn't have to go all the ways to 42, as I'm almost positive that Burt will hit the level he needs with the required war mech that's coming up on the Bridge of Destiny.
Yeah, absolutely. And you do see Burt, he's picking up his floater, and again, we're at a place where our runners are back to being neck and neck. Burt's going to do his herb turn in, which I can imagine SirLinkALot might have already done. And we're going to have to see whether or not, and I'm not sure if we've gotten a chime or a cube already, but we're going to see where our runners go from here and figure out if routing is going to make the difference in this match.
Yeah, so if this is not the Oxiale, oh, wow. Wow.
It is the Oxiale. Okay. Look at that.
So if this is not the Oxiale, I was going to say I expect them to go to Ordeals next. But with it being the Oxiale, I think Ordeals is still an option, but I think Waterfall, Oxiale, plus the 2 shop locations are going to be very tempting for our runners.
Yeah.
The slab turn-in also makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I really like Burt's decision because I think that Gaia in the slab turn-in is closer than going directly over to Onrak. And so he's going to do the slab turn-in. If he gets the bottle, you'll see him stop in Gaia. If he doesn't get the bottle, you'll see probably him go back to his ship, check on the caravan, and then head up to either Onrak directly or heading over to the waterfall.
Yeah, I think that all makes a lot of sense. And I think the waterfall is slightly preferred just because you're not skipping the waterfall at this point, and you might as well get that extra key item before you go kill Kraken. At this point, your levels are so good on that black belt that like it's not really a safety play, which is why sometimes you would debate doing one over the other. So I think you just get the key item first.
Yeah.
And we have the tail for sale.
Well, and Burt checking level 8 magic, level 8 white magic. I'm kind of curious what he was looking for at level 8 white.
Cure 4, I think, is
Cure 4.
Or Wall, actually, for that matter. I think both of those would have some potential utility here, but not to be, and that's actually a good thing for both of our runners.
Yeah, I don't think I don't remember if SirLinkALot checked level 7 magic in Gaia, but he did find the tail. Oh, we got Burt going to Gaia as well. I think he's going to stop in that white magic shop for the same reason.
Yeah, and he'll also be stopping in the shop. That's the main reason he's coming here. Little surprising that both runners chose to route Gaia in before they got the bottle, but not the end of the world.
Right. Yeah, and we do see, like, for me, I would buy the tail regardless of whether or not I plan to promote, simply for that plus 5% experience.
Yeah, for sure.
And Burt making the decision to check Ordeals before going over to the waterfall.
Interesting.
We've seen 1 dud, right? We haven't seen 2?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is a potentially significant routing decision, although not by no means guaranteed to be significant. If one of these 2 dungeons is skippable, which means that there's no required key item there, that could be quite important. And also keep in mind that there's the pseudo dud, the katana, still in the pool as well.
Right.
But
So
at this point, we're so short on key items, and we have no chime, no cube, so the sky incentive is likely to be a dud. It's there's a decent chance that both of these may be. I actually know it's pretty. I'm just doing key item math in my head. I think one of these has to be a dud, which means it's going to be very interesting. Oh no, we haven't checked Earth either. Okay.
Yeah, so like, well, and by dud, we're also throwing the katana in there. If you're like my run yesterday or the run we broadcast last night, and you get like a Massa +6 or a katana +6, that's great. But for our runners here, neither of them have a ninja, so that's why we consider it a dud. If you have a ninja, no, the katana is a very, very useful incentive check.
Yeah. So the key item locations we have remaining, just to kind of give a summary of what was going on in my head there, is that we have the Earth Cave incentive location, which is behind the Vampire. We have the Sky incentive location, which we need both the Chime and the Cube to access, which is why I think it's very, very likely that that is a dud location. And then we have Ordeals and Waterfall. So Ordeals and Waterfall are going to be the ones that it's going to be very interesting to see if either of them are skippable. Or if it's, for example, Chime Cube right there, then boom, no major advantage to either runner. Speaking of advantages to runners, though, did you see what BurtReynoldz just picked up?
I did, and that's why I made quite a sound. Yeah, Ribbon +6. And for those of you who are, in the Adamant, I was thinking it was going to be something like the Adamant. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with Final Fantasy 1, the Ribbon is a low absorb. It's a 1 absorb item. However, it grants resistance to every single damage type. And so the Ribbon is one of the most sought after defensive items, not for its absorb, but for the fact that it's going to add resistance to all different damage types.
Yeah, the fact that it's basically not replaceable by any, like there's no appropriate substitute. It's not like, oh, this one has 5 more absorb. The fact that the Ribbon kind of stands alone in its ability to resist all types is critical. It's not absolutely required for black belt seeds, but it adds a lot of additional safety and really makes it more likely that they could go in without promoting, for example, with just a single life caster on their white mage. That being said, I'm pretty sure Bert's about to promote, because I think promotion's pretty easy decision here with life life to promotion locked.
Yeah, and he's already put in his grind, so there's really no reason for him not to, considering he probably picked up Exit for his white mage at level 5. This is really a 10 to 15 second decision as opposed to a multi-minute decision that it could be. So Burt picking up the Adamant, he's heading down. He's probably going to do the Kraken fight. SirLinkALot just lit his second orb for Kraken. And we'll see if SirLinkALot picks up a Chime, a Katana, a TNT, or a dud here in the Waterfall.
Yeah, there is also still the Rod, of course, too.
Oh, right. Forgot about the Rod. I always forget about the Rod.
Yeah, so the Rod will influence the routing quite a bit, but at this rate, SirLinkALot seems like it's possible that he may be able to skip Ordeals depending on what he finds here. Like if this is the Rod, you definitely go Earth before Ordeals, for example. Because if this is the Rod, you do Earth and then you get Key, which leads to Chime or something like that, then you're just in, you could be in go mode.
Right.
So...
Well, and I want to point out something that BurtReynoldz just did. You'll notice that Burt did not stop to save on his way into the waterfall. And I love this play because Burt is of the one mindset of, I just need the incentive item and then I'm gone. So if he ends up not finding the incentive item, he can do a reset and save all of the steps or the tiles from that on-rack location all the way up to the waterfall. And it looks like it is the TNT from SirLinkALot's side. But had that been a dud, he would have a little bit of a time save to work back a little bit further than SirLinkALot would have.
So small routing efficiency that BurtReynoldz may get to do here compared to SirLinkALot is this. BurtReynoldz might be able to turn in both in dwarves at once, while SirLinkALot, if he goes to turn this in immediately, may double dip dwarves. So we'll have to see if SirLinkALot decides to turn this in or go to Ordeals. I'm not sure what I would choose. They're kind of close.
Yeah, I feel like... Yeah, I don't know. That's a tough decision. I think I've learned that whenever you are in the neighborhood of an Ordeals or Lefane check and you don't make the check, it usually comes back to bite you. So I would have probably done the Ordeals check. But again, if that Adamant matters, and it looks like SirLinkALot is heading over to Lefane to pick up his cube, If that routing decision turns out to matter, you might see Burt actually overtake SirLinkALot.
Yeah, these two runners are very, very neck and neck. Almost identical parties, almost identical levels. Burt has finished Ordeals, which we do not know if it matters yet. Meanwhile, SirLinkALot has finished Kraken. So actually, Burt has done two things. Burt has done Lefane, which SirLinkALot's doing right now, and has done Ordeals. Meanwhile, SirLinkALot has beat Kraken. And that is virtually the only difference between these two runners at this point. Now, Ordeals has two parts. It has both a ribbon as well as a potential necessary key item. So that is kind of Burt's advantage. But we'll have to see what this TNT turns into, is that could really change the routing for SirLinkALot. Like, once again, if this TNT turns into Rod and he goes there first, and Earth just happens to be the chime, that could be a very that could just be a time save that BurtReynoldz won't get back unless the ribbon turns out to be the difference maker.
Right. Yeah, I think if I'm SirLinkALot, I feel like I would potentially. Yeah, he's doing the TNT turn in. I was going to say, I feel like I would potentially fly towards Ordeals, save, and then do the TNT turn-in, because, when you're thinking about the amount of time it takes to do Ordeals versus the amount of time it takes to do this TNT check, if the TNT check works out for you, it's better than the Ordeals check.
Yeah, for sure. And that is a dud. So this does mean that Ordeals is required, but BurtReynoldz, actually, he could skip the TNT turn-in, but it's a relatively small time save. Ooh, SirLinkALot doing something a little bit spicy here. He's doing Rodless Earth. This is interesting. He really wants to skip Ordeals, and it's still it's still technically possible. If this is like key into Chime or just Chime, then Rod or key into Rod or something in Sky. Yeah, that's what SirLinkALot's banking on. So SirLinkALot really trying to avoid Ordeals on purpose because he wants to skip a dungeon, knowing that the TNT that he got from Waterfall was a waste of time, essentially.
Yeah, it's really going to play out to these kinds of small decisions. Again, execution-wise, I think we've seen BurtReynoldz make up time in his execution from the Garland fight at the very beginning, and we'll see if a routing decision puts SirLinkALot over Burt's ability to make up with efficiency. Yeah,
but don't go anywhere. This is a very, very, very tight race at this point.
Sorry, I love face cams. You got to see Burt's just pure enjoyment at punching the snot out of Kraken, and
I mean, Kraken has punched the snot out of us many a time, so it's nice to get a little bit of revenge once in a while.
Oh, absolutely. I love it. And I would expect us to see Burt head directly towards Dwarf Cave to turn in that Adamant and TNT. Yep. And we're going to find out right there whether or not this risk by SirLinkALot is a valuable risk or a mistake.
Yeah, okay, so Chime, that is on that path where both the Dwarven items are duds, but BurtReynoldz about to prove us wrong before Sky can. If you're a SirLinkALot fan, you want this Adamant to be nothing, and Adamant is required. So SirLinkALot is going to need to do a deal, and that double dip of Earth is going to be quite costly. It's just another time loss. As SirLinkALot, that means that the Rod is either going to be... Oh, actually, no. It may not be a time loss, because if the Rod is in Sky, that means that it's not required. But if the Rod is in Canaria locked, then you can single dip Earth, and that's going to be another time loss for SirLinkALot. We're talking about these little tiny edges because they really, really matter. Both these runners' execution has been fairly equal. Their levels have been fairly equal. Their grinds have been fairly equal. So it's really coming down to just a few small routing decisions. And I feel like BurtReynoldz, just because of the location, the fact that was the key in Ordeals, has gotten a slightly better routing.
Yeah. And I don't discount SirLinkALot's decision to do the Rod. It's a risky play. I think that, again, as you mentioned earlier, that the fact that there is a ribbon in Ordeals also impacts that decision, the crystal. And for SirLinkALot's benefit, there was really nothing in Dwarf Locked of value, so he's not going to lose anything by not checking dwarfs. And we'll see what this crystal is. Yeah, so
BurtReynoldz vibing on that one. He likes that Rod there because that means that he gets to now go single dip Earth for his go mode. Right. He doesn't know it's his. Oh, actually, no, he does know it's his go mode, and he's very happy about that.
Right.
If this was the chime instead, then that means that he would then have to go get the rod in sky, which would be a little bit unfortunate, or the rod was down here. But with that rod in hand, his routing is now dead simple for the rest of this race. He's going to go mode Earth, get his chime, then he's going to go mode Sky, skip the box, and then... Yeah,
I was going to say, like, he can even skip the Sky 2 incentive check because he knows that it's the dud.
Yep.
And, you know, SirLinkALot still has ordeals to do, so even though it looks like SirLinkALot is ahead at the moment, heading towards his third orb, BurtReynoldz has a dungeon on him, and he's about to have a dungeon and a half once he punches out Lich.
Yeah, so the difference right now is that SirLinkALot spent extra time diving Earth, and that's going to, you know, be a little bit costly as well. I think both these runners have a little bit of cleanup to do, and then they both are going to almost certainly go by Life 2 for their red mages, potentially buy some other spells, but they're pretty close to just putting the pedal on the metal, and this Temple of Fiends Revisited should not be too terribly scary. Oh, that's really bad item there for SirLinkALot. That bottle's going to be more of a time waste. And
yeah, that's going to send him on a rough path. You know, and again, like we're talking in somewhat definites in terms of who has the better, you know, routing decisions. But as we've seen in this tournament, and as we've seen through Final Fantasy Randomizer in general, just because you got to Topher first does not mean that you are going to win first. You know, even with a black belt at level 42, my most recent play, I wound up with a carry that, you know, punched out for 800 damage, then sent nuke and then nuclear, and it, no matter who your party is, having a punch nuke nuclear is going to devastate your party. So there are no definites. SirLinkALot is about to hit Warmac. That's another place where you could just get absolutely devastated. So there's still a lot more game to be played and a lot more things that can happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so here we go. SirLinkALot taking on this Warmech, going with defensive strategies, except for his black belt. He knows that this black belt may take a few turns to get through this Warmech without fast being available. 6 hits, that's pretty good damage. Oh, that was the other spell that I wanted to point out, was Promotion Lock, was Lock. Lock 2 was at level 5, and I think that's going to be something that these runners are going to want to pick up as well as Fade for the Red Wizards, which was Promotion Locked as well. So I expect them to be hitting level 5 and level 6 magic before they enter the Temple of Fiends Revisited. But if they feel behind, they may decide to skip that. SirLinkALot, though, done with Warmech. Not too big of a deal. Didn't really see anything scary from him, and he is going to be on to Tiamat while BurtReynoldz kills his third feed, Lich.
Yeah, and I'll call the play-by-play. So we got a punch, we got some fire too, but the punch takes out Lich. So there you go. That was beautiful play-by-play by DVS, and Burt has lit his third orb, and SirLinkALot's on Tia. So this might be a little bit of a more interesting fight. We have some fades coming out, we have some nukes coming out. Doing some low rolls in the 180 round, Tia did very, very little damage on his hit, so you're not going to see SirLinkALot throw out any types of invis, and it held the black belt. So that's a rough deal for SirLinkALot, again, because that black belt is going to be his primary damage dealer, and this Tiamat can be upwards of 1,500 hit points. And
2,000.
2,000 hit points. And with these fades only doing 100 to 200 damage, that's giving this Tiamat a lot of room to potentially do some major damage to SirLinkALot's party. 4 hits for 190 on that white mage, that's encouraging for SirLinkALot because that's not a ton of damage on typically your weakest defense. And it looks like he's just going to throw out a steady stream of these nukes. And I don't see it. And there you go. Tiamat is down, and SirLinkALot is going to light his third orb, just as BurtReynoldz starts heading into Sky to light his fourth orb, and we'll see who's going to end up in Temple of Fiends the fastest.
Yeah, so if you're just joining us, you are watching the SpeedGaming Live 2020 Final Fantasy Randomizer Tournament. This is the round of 8, the quarterfinals, a matchup between BurtReynoldz and SirLinkALot. Both runners are undefeated in this tournament so far, going 3-0 in their pods and then winning their round of 16 matchups. My name is Jat. I'm joined here in the booth by DVS, and we are just kind of approaching the end game. Both runners with 1 orb left to go, but BurtReynoldz with a little bit of an advantage because he has all the items that are required. Meanwhile, SirLinkALot has one sub-dungeon to do, or one minor dungeon to do in ordeals in order to get all the items that he needs in order to get hit go mode. So BurtReynoldz with a small edge, and I would say it's almost certain that BurtReynoldz is going to be entering Topher earlier, but what happens in the final dungeon, it is hard to say. So, stick around and see how this race finishes up.
Yeah, and you just saw SirLinkALot shake his head to receive his dud of about 4,800 gold, knowing that he has to do this Ordeals dive.
Yeah.
And so the benefit for SirLinkALot is the Lich Dungeon, the Earth Dungeon, is one of the shortest dungeons in the game. Volcano is going to be the shortest, Earth is going to be the second shortest, and BurtReynoldz is going to have to do his War Mech fight plus his Tia fight, which SirLinkALot has already showed us is not going to take that much time. So depending on SirLinkALot's choices in the Ordeals maze, which is different from vanilla. So in vanilla, if you didn't know, you always want to choose the lowest column. In our randomizer, we completely shake that up, so it could be any column goes anywhere. And depending on how you make your guesses, SirLinkALot already finding the staircase. It'll be interesting to see if he makes a check for any of these chests to find that ribbon +6. At the moment, if I were SirLinkALot, I probably would not check it. At least I'm going to say I wouldn't check it. I probably would anyway, because I'm that kind of a runner. But there's a chance he can miss out on this ribbon 6, and it looks like he will.
Yeah, I think you feel behind. He's been trying so hard to skip Ordeals. Like, he really, really wanted his edge in this race to be to skip Ordeals, and he wasn't able to. And that's, like, hurting him, and he feels like he's a little bit behind here. So he knows that's the adamant, he knows that's going to turn into the rod, and he also knows that by trying to skip Ordeals, what he ended up doing was a double dip of Earth, which he knows is additional time loss. He didn't know that, Burt got a little bit behind in the early game, but Burt has made excellent decisions kind of from that point onward, and I wouldn't even argue that his early game decisions were necessarily poor. It just, ended up making him a little bit behind.
Right.
And BurtReynoldz, oh yeah, thumbs up to the camera. His black belt hit 42 right before this War Mech fight.
That's perfect. That's perfect. I love these cameras. And the decision that SG has made to do this, it just gives that little bit of that personality experience. And it's interesting to always see people that you've been running against for months, in my case with this community, and actually being able to see the human being behind the name. It's a great aspect of this. And it looks like SirLinkALot has gotten his key. BurtReynoldz has pulled his War Mech. If it's anything like, yep, there it goes. And War Mech is down.
So yeah, so SirLinkALot going to turn this key into the crystal into the rod, and then he's going to be entering his final dungeon while BurtReynoldz finishes his final fiend. Now the question is, with SirLinkALot probably feeling a little bit behind, is he going to skip spell buying? I doubt BurtReynoldz will. So if Burt decides to, get some spells, and SirLinkALot decides not to, that will close the gap slightly, but at this point BurtReynoldz on pace for just a slightly earlier Temple of Fiends Revisited dive.
Yeah, I agree. I can see SirLinkALot turning in this crystal, get the rod, defeat Lich and go directly to Temple of Fiends. I think Burt's going to go check and pick up some extra magic. I know that SirLinkALot has picked up a couple things on his way. I could see him stop at Melmond on the way to Earth to pick up potentially some spells, and it looks like he's diverting over to Crescent Lake to pick up that life spell.
Yeah, this makes sense. I mean, it's the safer play for sure, but at this point we're just looking for ways that SirLinkALot can pick up a little bit of time, as he is essentially just a dungeon behind BurtReynoldz at this point.
Yeah, and again, as I said earlier, it is one of our shorter dungeons, so again, and there's the issue of the true boss of Final Fantasy Randomizer being Kraken 2, and whether or not Kraken 2 decides to roll some awfulness. And it looks like Burt is foregoing some magic pickups, and he's in Temple of Fiends Revisited at the 1 hour, 17 minute, and 30 second mark. And we'll find out if this decision to not go out and get some of these safety magic spells is going to be for his benefit or for his undoing.
Yeah, of course, he doesn't know that he's in the lead. So if he knew he was in the lead, he would definitely go pick up the additional safety, because getting that additional safety makes it more likely, and the way that he loses this race is if he wipes in Temple of Fiends Revisited here. But he probably feels behind from that early decision still, and he doesn't know that his routing was more efficient than SirLinkALot's, based off where the incentive items ended up. So, he decided that he needed to go right away without taking really any advantage of that promoted party, and he is just going to dive straight down.
Yeah, and he did check what we call the validation checks. It's those two checks on either side of the loot stone, and it is a couple steps out of the way. But if it has a defense sword or a ribbon or some other fantastic defensive item, then it's worth checking. And you'll see runners in our community are kind of split between whether you check validation or whether you don't check validation. And for those of you Final Fantasy runners in chat, feel free to express your feelings about the incentive checks as we watch BurtReynoldz in the floor before Lich 2 and SirLinkALot in the floor before Lich 1.
Yeah, the validation checks do not take steps that cause encounters, so it's just steps in terms of like a little bit of time loss and opening boxes. But the theory is, like, I'm on the side, don't open. If you're not ready for Topher before you open those boxes, if you're, you shouldn't be in Topher. So, yeah. Here we go, though. BurtReynoldz about to take on... We are going to see dueling Liches. Unfortunately for fans of SirLinkALot, SirLinkALot is on Lich 1, while BurtReynoldz is on Lich 2. Important to note, BurtReynoldz does have the ribbon advantage at this point as well. And if SirLinkALot... he probably needs to go... Actually, he picked up Life 2 already, so he has some additional safety. He needs this dive to go poorly for Burt, and that means that like Kraken needs to punch out his Life Caster or something along those lines. That is what SirLinkALot's looking for.
Right.
BurtReynoldz quickly through Lich, SirLinkALot also quickly through Lich, and BurtReynoldz onto the carry floor while SirLinkALot has lit his 4th orb and is about to enter the Temple of Fiends Revisited.
Yeah, and we'll see how Burt does against this carry 2 fight. Not really even healing up for it. We've got punches, tempers, Invis 2, and another temper. So he's really looking for a 1 punch coming out of this black belt. The Invis 2 is just kind of a just in case. Doing about 900 damage, which is over Lich's vanilla, carry's vanilla amount of HP. I can anticipate that after this next round, carry is not going to survive. But you do have to be looking at Burt's White Mage. The condition of Burt's White Mage, especially coming to this next floor with Kraken 2, might make the difference in this end game. Yes, he has a 42 black belt, but if there's no life and that black belt gets stuck against the chaos that has high evade, there is nothing that Burt can do.
Yeah.
Nothing that Burt can do.
I mean, a 42 black belt can still do it, but he has limited options. He has a white shirt. That's really the one benefit, but outside of that, not too much. So BurtReynoldz, in fairly good shape here, but SirLinkALot hot on his heels. A wipe from Burt will definitely catapult SirLinkALot into the lead, and SirLinkALot has all the advantages that Burt has except for the ribbon, but he's traded it for 3 life casters. So I would say SirLinkALot's dive is just slightly safer. But BurtReynoldz with an advantage, obviously, being 2 fiends ahead.
Yeah, and I didn't check to see if either of them did a hard reset before going into Topher. And that goes into what we call the encounter tables. And if you do a hard reset, you go back to the very beginning of the encounter table. And usually our runners would do that if they want to know exactly what's coming up through Temple of Fiends. So if they are on different parts of the encounter table, which it does look like they are, SirLinkALot might have a different experience on that seafloor than Burt did. Burt had a lot of encounters, had a lot of difficulty running away, and we'll see if that ends up coming into play.
Yeah, I do want to highlight that neither of them is technically correct. It's just, luck, kind of.
Right.
And BurtReynoldz, wait, did he pick up life on his red mages?
Yeah,
he must have picked up life on his red wizards. There's no way he does this otherwise. So we must have just not seen it when he did it.
And we just saw a 42 black belt do only like 300 damage to that Kraken 2. So Kraken 2 might be as dangerous as as Burt might fear it is.
Yeah, so Kraken, we have Invis stacks up, but Kraken casting a nuke at this point is going to be very dangerous. 10 hits, 424, damage stacking up, but this Kraken going to be here for at least another turn. Turn order going to be important. Temper's coming out. Quad X, that's a free turn for Burt with all those pro rings. Never mind, over 300 HP. 10 hits, 768. Kraken's going to get another turn here. Burt needs to cross his fingers, not nuke. And Lit 2, certainly not nuke. This punch should do the trick here. Kraken gets hit for 1200 damage. Down goes Kraken 2. BurtReynoldz through this floor with 3 mages remaining, and he did pick up life. Okay, that makes more sense.
Okay, I thought I had saw maybe he did it on one red mage or not the other. I thought I had seen no life 2 on one of them. But that makes Burt's decision to dive right now make a lot more sense, as well as putting that white mage up at the top.
It also justifies his promotion as well, because that life 2 on those red mages is really, like, promoting for that makes a ton of sense. BurtReynoldz about to take on Tiamat 2 while SirLinkALot on Lich. Same strategies here, triple Invis 2 casts. Oh no, 1 Invis cast, 2 tempers. Okay, making sense. Tiamat generally less of a physical threat than
Mhm.
Kraken. Wanting to get him down before he has a chance to go through his spell and skill list. 10 hits, 1100 damage. That's a big punch. BurtReynoldz shaking his head. He's vibing. That
Mhm.
if he gets the same punch, that Tiamat is guaranteed to go down.
Mhm. And we'll see if Tiamat throws out another. Never mind.
42 black belts doing what 42 black belts done. BurtReynoldz threw the 4 fiends revisited onto the final floor chaos, while SirLinkALot just a few fiends behind. So this is a relatively close race, but BurtReynoldz with a small advantage here.
Yep, absolutely. And typically, again, chaos is not what I consider the most difficult boss. You'll see him throw out some Invis 2 stacks, and then you'll see him throw out tempers on that black belt. With Chaos only doing 1 hit, I don't see him doing Invis stacks after this. You'll either see him do wait, or wait, temper, punch, temper. And at 10 hits and 750, I'd say wait, punch, wait. And just let your black belt do their work and stand out of its way. But it looks like Burt's going to do one more round of Invis 2 casting as well as tempers. And it looks like another punch coming out, 10 hits for 612, Invis 2 coming out as SirLinkALot picks up his Kraken 2 fight. We have Heal 3 coming out of the White Mage. We're again tempering up that black belt. Ice 3 coming out of Kraken 2, temper, and Heal 3. SirLinkALot invising up against that Kraken. Chaos doing another punch that did little. And at 10 hits, 1,300 damage. At 1 hour, 25 minutes, and about 3 or 4 seconds, BurtReynoldz has taken this match. Congratulations to BurtReynoldz. You saw on his face the look of relief and the respect he has for SirLinkALot and his routing. As SirLinkALot comes up against his Tia 2, let's make sure we put those GGs in chat for BurtReynoldz.
Yeah, you can see SirLinkALot give it the little head shake there, just like, darn. That was, I could have had that, but I think SirLinkALot knows where his routing cost him, and unfortunately, when you make a gamble like Rodless Earth, against a strong runner like BurtReynoldz, you will pay the price if that gamble doesn't turn out, and that is unfortunately what has happened to SirLinkALot. Once again, this is not saying that's the wrong decision, but it is a little bit of a gamble, and there is a price to be paid for that decision not panning out. So BurtReynoldz finishing with an official racetime.gg time of 1:25 exactly, 0-0. So not the fastest race that we've seen, but that's just because the floater was kind of a little bit late.
Right.
The grinds were taken early, and a combination of those things.
Right. And we do want to point out again our Duckling program, because SirLinkALot is actually our Duckling Supreme of our current Duckling class, which Jat and I were both a part of our most recent Duckling class. And it just goes to show how strong our Duckling program is to have someone like SirLinkALot do a great match against someone at BurtReynoldz' character and make it up to the round of 8. So this is still an amazing showing by a relatively new runner in SirLinkALot.
SirLinkALot's Chaos, though, not going to be long for this world, doing over 1,000 damage. Let's make sure we're cheering him all the ways to the end here. This, unfortunately, for fans of SirLinkALot, will be his last race, but still, congratulations to SirLinkALot for getting into the money of this tournament, finishing Chaos off with an official racetime.gg time of 1 hour, 26 minutes, and 51 seconds. So SirLinkALot pretty good at clicking stop on his timer as well. And there you go. So unfortunately, both runners have declined to do an interview, as SirLinkALot's been actually taking part in 2 tournaments this weekend, while BurtReynoldz had to run off to other commitments. But, just to kind of wrap things up, I think we've kind of discussed a lot of the major storylines, but, do you have any final thoughts before we hand this room over to SpeedGaming again?
Yeah, my first thought is, I love the Final Fantasy Randomizer and the Final Fantasy Randomizer community. If you are interested, if you look at this and you say, hey, that looks like fun, please go to FinalFantasyRandomizer.com. Please join our Discord. If you go to our Discord, there is something called the Duck Pond. That is in no way an insult to anybody. It is our Duckling program is specifically geared to new runners. They ask questions, and you will have the best of the best answer your questions. And there are dozens of people who are willing to do it. And coming up, I think starting either tomorrow or next week, Jat would know better than I would, we are starting our beginning of our Duckling Boot Camp, which is veteran runners creating flag sets and really teaching you absolutely everything that you need to know in order to to really learn the game. And these what am I saying? Yes, and these flag sets will get more difficult as you go on, specifically so our veterans can teach our runners the new tricks and strategies that they can do to become even better runners, and maybe even wind up in this tournament at the final bracket stage like SirLinkALot did.
Yeah, absolutely. So, with that, we'll wrap things up here. I just wanted to quickly thank our tracker tonight, Shadowed Flames. I wanted to thank SpeedGaming and SpeedGaming Live for both hosting this tournament and broadcasting this race. And I want to thank my co-tracker, DVS. Or sorry, co-commentator DVS.
Nah, it's all right. It's all right. It's been a long week.
For joining me tonight. And with that, I hope you all tune in again tomorrow for the finals of the SpeedGaming Live 2020 tournament, as well as the semifinals. So with that, have a good night, everyone.
Have a good night.